I'd like to welcome everyone to the College of Law and the Centre for Legal Innovations New Laws Careers Summit, and welcome to the panel discussion on the role of the Knowledge Manager. I'm Mira Renko, Special Counsel in Knowledge and Practice Support for the finance team here at K&L Gates. And I'm acting as the facilitator and host for the session where we'll be discussing the role of a knowledge manager and how knowledge managers play a pivotal role in legal practice with these amazing and experienced specialists. We've got Leona Blanco, National Knowledge and Information Manager at Clyde & Co, and Catherine Bryant, Knowledge Manager and Automation Lead at Tompkins Wake, and she's from New Zealand. So this is a Trans-Tasman panel. And we've got Fiona Evans, Director of Knowledge, Asia Pacific at Norton Rose Fulbright. So to kick off our discussion and to give our audience a flavour of what is involved in our role, I think we'll start with you, Leona. What does a typical day look like for you?
Yes, hi everyone. Glad to have you here. So I've been a knowledge manager for about 20 years at 3 different law firms, local, national, and now global at Clyde & Co. I manage a team of 3, and I also work with all our paralegals and our summer clerks. I look after library and research, legal tech, document automation, some risk projects, precedents, information portal, current awareness newsletter. So my day basically involves a triage of my inbox to work out what needs the most immediate response, as in who is shouting the loudest, or which one is the most critical, and I go on from there.
Great, thanks, Leona. That seems like a really wide portfolio. How does that compare to, for example, Fiona, what you do in, because your role is Asia Pac?
Yes. Yes, it is. So, yes, I'm very fortunate to have a team of 15
wow.
in Australia and 5 more in Asia. Because we're a global role, obviously that influences what the day looks like. So the day might start quite early with a call with my colleagues in the US or Canada. Conversely, if we're including Europe and South Africa in those calls, they tend to be at a pretty uncivilized time for in our time zone in Australia. And I don't think there is really a typical day because it's so varied. That's one of the things I really love about the role. It might be working at home or it might be in the office, obviously more so than a couple of years ago. But as well as kind of checking what's come in overnight and prioritizing that, it might include things like reviewing publications which are going out in the firm's name, helping people find precedents or guidance, answering legal questions or practical questions, delivering training sessions, assessing new products, planning document automation projects, so a whole range of things, really varied.
Wow. You mentioned training sessions. Does that involve legal training, as in a particular practice area, or is it more generic type training?
It's a mixture, actually. So we have a fabulous L&D team who deal with business skills, and the knowledge team deals with the legal training in collaboration with each of the practice teams. So as well as sort of more general legal training like drafting and negotiation skills, we would deliver, I suppose, practice area specific training as well. I mean, I'm a banking lawyer by background, and when I started this role, I found, much to my surprise, that I really like training. So I tend to do quite a bit of that myself. Other team members who are perhaps not quite so keen on having a captive audience would probably organise other people to do that more often.
Great, thanks, Fiona. Now, Catherine, would you like to talk to us about what a typical day looks like for you? And I note that out of all of us, you're the only one with automation lead in your title.
Yes, so my day, I guess, is a bit like Fiona's in the sense that I don't have a typical day because I have a very broad role, and so it could be automating documents or building a legal chatbot, either as a marketing tool or to help clients to renew change in an area of law. or I might be, you know, updating one of our teams on a change, you know, a new legal development, or writing an article, or doing a case update, or doing, you know, marketing or business development work. So, but yes, the technology is a reasonably large portion of what I do.
Well, I think that's come through in what Leona and Fiona talked about as well. And also just, you know, to fill this out, my day is quite similar in terms of while I am a specialist in the banking and finance team, I get involved in firm-wide projects. Automation of documents is a big part of what I also do, as well as, you know, training, because, you know, much to my surprise, I found I really enjoyed training the junior lawyers, and also mentoring the summer clerks as they come in and giving them specialist training in particular practice areas. So the variety is what has attracted me to the role. Also, the mental stimulation of new developments in the law that need to be incorporated into the legal practice. So yeah, there is a lot of variety in the role, and you don't, when you come in the morning, you don't know exactly what you're going to be doing. Sure, you've got a wish list and a list that you have to go through in terms of, you know, you must do the training, you've got to follow up with legal developments and put them into a newsletter or something like that. Catherine, I was quite interested in what you spoke about in some of the marketing stuff. What does that actually involve?
Well, it's very varied. So it could be, you know, preparing a newsletter for clients for a specific sector, or a broad newsletter, or it could be writing an article on a new development that can then get, you know, adapted by somebody else in the firm, or it can be, I work on sort of some bigger initiatives, like in our startup practice, looking at how we can kind of grow the startup ecosystem in New Zealand. So, you know, on a wide range of how can we get them involved, how can we provide new resources. So it's very varied.
Yeah, it sounds very varied. I used to work for a global firm with a lot of practice support lawyers in the UK, and they were very much focused on the marketing side of things, and, you know, going out to market with the new law in terms of, you know, case notes, also marketing directly to clients, and telling them about new developments and that sort of thing. And it isn't a big part of my role here at Canol Gates. And while it is a part of our roles to some extent in terms of reviewing client alerts or something like that, it isn't a major focus. Now, what has attracted us to this particular role? Fiona, I'll start off with you.
Oh, gosh. Well, honestly, to begin with, it wasn't really a question of being attracted to any particular role. It was trying to find something which was compatible with family life. As at the time I had one small child and I had another one on the way, that was also going to pay enough to keep the roof over our heads, because I've always been the breadwinner in our family. And I have to say, in the mid-1990s, there weren't really that many options. And I'd had the conversation about, you know, can I do flexible hours with my supervising partner, who said, you know, we'd all like Fridays off, now run along. So it was that flexibility, really, I think, when I found it. And, you know, I think it's probably a misconception to think that the hours are necessarily better. I find that I have always found that I've worked at least as hard in a knowledge role as I ever did in a fee earning role. But apart from that, you know, being able to use my experience of managing transactions and mentoring people, I like that. Those were two of the aspects that I really loved about fee earning, and I like bringing those to this particular role, and being able to get more deeply into kind of legal developments and to be the expert on something. I mean, I think those are, you know, some of the main things that attracted me to the role.
Yeah, I think those sorts of things resonate with all of us. Leona, would you like to talk about why you're attracted to the particular role?
Well, it's a similar story, because 20 years ago, yes, I was a practicing lawyer, and I had gone from general counsel to a small practice, and then I had my first child, followed very quickly by my second child. And you could not be a litigation lawyer and work without working full time. It just was not possible. And so I was told about a role that was coming up as a precedence lawyer, as it then was. And I was like, oh, I could do this. And it happened to be somewhere where I knew a few of the partners. So I started and developed the role at a firm that was then Dibbs, Crowther and Osborne. And I absolutely loved it. I was like, I agree that the hours can be actually longer than as a practicing lawyer, because I actually work, in theory, I work 4 days a week. But in reality, I work 5 days a week. I get paid for 4 days a week, but on my Friday, which is always the day there is something dreadfully urgent, I will be looking at my phone to make sure that there isn't something that I need to cover off on. But it is flexible, and we don't have to do the 6 minutes. That is, for me, one of the huge advantages. You might have to draft your firm's cost agreements, but you don't have to live by it. And that is a really big advantage. And now it's become a passion, because I think knowledge management, as it has morphed into, is now a real role. It is a role that is very vital to firms who can afford a knowledge manager, because I understand you need a critical mass to get to that point. But during the first COVID lockdown, my role was made business critical. And I was quite surprised that the board understood actually what I did for them. And I didn't understand what business critical meant, but I was quite surprised to know that, yes, your role is so critical, we will require you to come into the firm at any time. That was the downside of it. They never did ask me to do that, but I thought that was a huge leap. I don't know that it was the same in other countries. We're in something like 52 offices in God knows how many countries. I don't know that it was the same in all of those countries, but certainly in Australia, they could not have survived without the work that our team was doing for them. So absolutely love that.
I think that sort of resonates with all of us as well, because during the last couple of years in lockdown, our role has certainly become mission critical. And I have never received so many phone calls while I was at home, and not in people's faces. They at least knew who I was, looking for things and asking about, oh, what can be signed electronically, that sort of thing during the pandemic. So I think the pandemic has taught people the value of people like us in the firm. Now, Catherine, I didn't give you a chance to talk about what attracted you to the role. And I see with the automation lead, was that something to do with, wanting to work with automating documents and that sort of thing, or?
In some ways, my story is similar in that I was looking for more flexibility, because I was also a litigation lawyer. But the other thing that really attracted me was that this was a new role for Tompkins Wake. So we've been a very fast growing firm, and we'd hit that critical mass of needing, knowledge management. And so I've really enjoyed that I've had the chance to shape the role sort of how I think it should look, and how, to what I think the firm's needs are. And so having the chance to create and shape that role has been fantastic. And the flexibility. So I would agree, it's not fewer hours, but I can do the job at different times. It's not quite so, 8 till 5 as a legal role can be. And actually, I spent 18 months until Christmas last year working from France in my job for my firm in New Zealand. So that was a fantastic opportunity.
I'll have to talk to you, Catherine. I want to get that across.
Without skipping a beat, no doubt, because it doesn't matter where you are as long as you're in contact with people. So a few themes have come out of that. The flexibility, which I think these days, if you want to be a practicing lawyer, law firms are better prepared to be flexible these days, as opposed to 15, 20 years ago, when we went into the role where unless you were prepared to work 80 hours a week, you couldn't be a practicing lawyer. But also the different variety that we get, and the fact that we like dealing with people and mentoring junior lawyers. So there's sort of the key themes that I hear. Now, in terms of the broad scope of the role, what do people think are the most important skills and attributes that are needed for someone in our particular role? Fiona, do you want to kick off?
Oh, yes. Now, curiosity.
That's good. Yes.
Willingness just to try something, to take a leap of faith and see how it turns out. And when I was thinking about this yesterday, I thought that the word of the decade, pivot, the ability to pivot, seems to be essential. Given that I never intended to be a lawyer in the first place, I'd never heard of knowledge when I needed the role. And I distinctly remember the discussion with my husband where we decided that Australia would be a move too far. All of those things have happened. But seriously, I think the ability to adapt is one of the most important things.
Catherine, what about you?
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Is you've just got to be adaptable. You've got to be willing to deal with so many different aspects of law and be interested in so many aspects of law. There are certain areas where people will say, oh, I can't imagine working in that. But actually, I think finding every area of law interesting is a massive advantage. And seeing, as technology comes in or as things change, embracing that and looking at, how can we be better? How can we do, continuous improvement internally and externally for our clients? I think that's the mindset you need to have.
Yeah.
Leona, do you want to talk about what you think is important?
So practicing lawyer, I still continue to hold my practicing certificate. And I think that's really important because I think that's a grounding for you. So having previously been a commercial lawyer, I think that part of practice is important to understand the needs of your customers. And your customers are the lawyers in the firm. And the lawyers, the secretaries, or business services, they are your customers. And I think for me, I think it's the ability to be able to connect with people. So it's a role in which empathy, or EQ, is so really important. You're the interface between what the customer needs and what they need to get. And quite often I'm the interface between tech and lawyers, and there is a readjustment that has to happen when you're delivering a message there. And I think that's really important. So you have to understand the tech, and then you need to do it in lawyer speak. And it's sad that has to happen, but it is true that it does happen. And I have to say, I probably do some of my best work in the lift. So I've got a captured audience in the time it takes me to go to level 9. And I get so much information out of people. I was going to say the toilet, but that just sounds really weird. But it's your ability to connect with anybody at all. I think that's the most important part of being a really good knowledge manager.
I think I would agree with that, Leona, that ability to be able to talk to anyone at any time about all sorts of things, because you have the most senior partner sometimes ringing you, upset because they can't find something or they want a bit of help with negotiating something. And the curiosity that Fiona mentioned, I find is important, because you've got to think about, what are the impacts of, this new legislation, or what's this case going to impact going to have on practice. So and I think all of us would say our legal background, as in our legal study, as well as our legal practice, is very important, because that gives us an understanding of what our clients, who are the lawyers in the firm, have to deal with, and where they're coming from. Do you feel as though does anyone feel they're missing, a skill set in, for example, a lot of what we do is project management. And I think, what do people feel about, having done, I know myself, I've done some project management courses to assist with some of the projects that I run. What about you, Catherine? Do you want to talk about, other skills that are important as well in the role?
Well, I, outside work, I have a business that I run with my husband, and I've also served on boards for a number of charities. And I find that having the skills to see the bigger picture, to look at, not just the technical legal side, but looking at the business side, I think that that is just absolutely essential to the job, because you're looking at the needs of the business as well as the needs of the clients.
That's so true, actually, because you do need to think about, what is the impact of what you're doing. Fiona, I might call on you to think about some of the other things that you need in your role.
Relentless optimism. And I say that because there are always so many interesting and exciting projects and so many things that you really want to do, and there's never enough time or enough money to do them all. But I think unless you remain optimistic, you could begin to feel a bit ground down by all the things that you can't do yet. We've had projects over the years. There was one particular project that I was involved in about 20 years ago, which was actually a failure. And like all good failures, I learned a great deal from it. But for the last 20 years, I have remained optimistic about applying those lessons. And as I say, I just think optimism is really important.
Yeah, that's so true. Yes. And that's another thing we get from our role, sort of learning from projects that have failed, because I know many years ago, I was involved in one of the first document automation projects in Australia, and I learned a lot from the failure because we tried to build a huge beast that was all moving parts and, all things to all people. And then I realized, having gone through that, the firm pushing it and spending a lot of money pursuing it, they realized, well, actually, no, automation is better served for, something quite different in terms of the best application. Yeah. So we all think, our experience as practicing lawyers. Catherine, you brought your business experience to the table as well. I think also, we have families dealing with different personalities helps us in our role as well. And dealing with, people at all levels of the profession and people who also support the profession, as Leona mentioned, the IT people. We need to, quite often we are the interface with the between the lawyers and IT. Also, we need to, train up secretaries or get admin staff and paralegals up to speed with what they need to be doing in a law firm. So it's a broad range of skills, not necessarily only legal.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, sorry, just to pick up on that point, I mean, we've sort of talked about our experience as practicing lawyers, and whereas I think in most cases I would say that was a necessary skill. I do wonder whether it's always necessary. I mean, I have one particular example of a colleague who was a paralegal who worked with me in London, and she worked in a regulatory area and was very, very expert in that, and hadn't practiced, but still very much wanted to become a knowledge lawyer. And for a long time, sort of the principle about not being a qualified lawyer and not having practiced held her back. And then the practice had a change of heart, and we gave her a training contract. I supervised her in her training contract, and she qualified, and now she's actually a director in our London office. And I have to say that progression and being able to meet her career aspirations is one of the proudest, the proudest aspects of my career so far.
Wow.
So, I think in some cases, technical experience is really important, and practicing experience might not be so vital.
Yeah. What do others feel about that? Catherine.
Sorry, go.
Well, Leona, there you go first.
I was just going to say that sadly we had a slightly different experience just recently. We had hired a research assistant, so she had a law degree and she had a master's in research, and she wasn't a PSL, she was simply doing research. But that body of knowledge that you get from actually practicing in law, especially in the insurance space, she just didn't have it. And she actually came to me and offered her resignation and said, I just don't have the skill set to do this particular work. So very good of her to actually have the insight to see that she needed something more to be able to do the job. And so I think if you're given the sufficient support, like the person Fiona's talking about, yes, you could become a knowledge lawyer in a particular field. I think that would be possible. But I do think at the ground level that law degree and the practice of law, it's just something you absorb. It's you're not actually, you can't read it in a book. You just absorb that knowledge, and I think that it turned out, for us at least. So now we're looking for PSLs. So if anybody is wanting to apply, look out for me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, good on you, Leona. It's always good to pitch to your audience.
Absolutely.
I must say, we had a similar experience. I have had similar experiences, one with a person I hired, not as a knowledge lawyer, but a knowledge manager, and they had done a degree in knowledge management. They had the skill set in terms of, you know, setting up social networks, skill sets in collating material and organizing material, SharePoint and other online experience, but in terms of the legal knowledge and the background, they really felt out of their depth. So they were quite uncomfortable, and also there was a slight bit of non-acceptance by lawyers of that person in that role, because they felt that person did not fully understand the law, or so even though with guidance, it didn't quite work out. We had a recent experience hiring a recent law graduate who had a master's in law as a legal technologist, but it didn't really work out because she had never worked as a lawyer, so couldn't quite grasp why, you know, documents had to work in a particular way, and that sort of thing. So it was difficult for her. This particular person ended up going elsewhere, but it's just an example that I've come across where someone with no legal practice experience have not quite worked out. Now let's talk about some of the challenges that come to us in our role. Leona, do you want to kick off on that?
It's already been alluded to, but budget is one of the big challenges for our role. We have great ideas. We can see a need, and sometimes we have to be very clever about doing things without a budget. So we can be resourceful, but yes, budget is a big consideration at the firm. Obviously, the main part of my budget goes to the library and online resources. So when I have recently embarked on an automation piece, that did take me 2 years to get across, because they were worried that it would blow out exponentially when people saw the value of the automation, and privately, that's what I'm hoping will happen as well, but so that we can do more of it, business efficiency. But that's probably the biggest challenge is budget, and the second biggest challenge is having enough time to do all the wonderful things that we would love to do, because we really could do so much more. And that's again a budget thing, because if I had more people, I could do more with them. So slowly, but yes, I think that those are the two great challenges in my role.
I see you nodding, Fiona. Do you want to talk about some of the challenges that
yes,
you're facing?
I absolutely agree with what Leona was saying. I guess too, I mean, promoting the value of something as intangible as quality can be quite hard, because, you know, our clients are entitled to and do assume that it's there. I mean, obviously it's what they're paying for and it's what they expect. But we do actually have to work quite hard to make sure that they're justified in that assumption. You know, promoting the value of something which, you know, you're only aware if it's not there. So, you know, how do you value not being sued for getting it wrong? That's sort of fairly difficult. But I mean, we push that point anyway, of course. And I would say that a knowledge role is absolutely all about quality.
Absolutely. Catherine?
I think it comes down to the time, that there is so much to do, and so much of it is interesting and that I would like to be doing. And it's about looking at, well, what's absolutely necessary and has to be done, and then looking at, well, what's going to add the most value. And so it's all about triaging, you know, not necessarily what I'm most interested in, but where do I see the most value for the firm and, you know, for the lawyers in the firm, and having to constantly juggle priorities, because there's just so much to do and so much information to manage.
Absolutely. I think I would agree with that. Now, I might just stop the discussion on this particular point, because we have a question from one of our audience. Gabriella has a question about our previous topic, which is people without legal practice experience succeeding in the particular role. Does anyone have any practical experience, any examples? I know in another global law firm where I was, there was definitely a person who was purely a knowledge manager. He came up through the library research side of things, and he was successful in the role and currently is still in that particular role. Anyone else have any examples of someone without legal practical experience succeeding in the role of a knowledge person in a law firm, as opposed to someone purely on the information services side?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is such a broad range of knowledge roles, I think. So I mean, apart from the person I was talking about earlier, and I think she succeeded largely because of her personality, and also because she'd been a paralegal embedded within the practice for a very long time. So it was kind of akin to practical experience. I mean, there are various other roles that we have, like people who are specifically dedicated to document automation, they've often done a law degree, so they kind of know the background, but perhaps haven't practiced. And very quickly they know their way around the documents absolutely fine, which is sort of, I think, one of the core requirements for that. So I've seen people succeed in that kind of environment.
Right. Anyone else got any points about people succeeding? Well, I think, Gabriella, just to get back to you, Leona.
I was just going to say, I agree with Fiona. I think there would be certain roles that you could do without the practice. The one that I had, you couldn't. But if you were doing an automation project, if you were doing a dedicated library research role, yes, I think that is possible. So don't give up hope. If you think this is something, there are actually quite a few knowledge roles that are being advertised at the moment. Some of them are not in law. Some of them are in our clients. Our clients want to embed that capture of knowledge into their organisation. So think a little bit outside the field if you're thinking to go down that path.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, certain aspects of our role, if you want to stay in a law firm, can definitely be done by someone without legal practice experience. And as Leona has said, there are so many roles. Like, for example, I do know one or two people that have gone to some of the government roles and now embedding knowledge managers in their departments, especially some of the big departments like infrastructure and transport, where there's a whole lot of projects and that information needs to be shared about those projects, and there's certainly, you know, some massive roles in knowledge management opening up in government, but also in our clients, some of our business organisations that we work for, the top 200 companies, definitely. Now, our next topic is sort of the perception of the role in our organisations and where we work. And certainly one thing we touched upon earlier on was when COVID hit and everyone was in lockdown, our roles suddenly became really, really important, and people sort of really valued what we did. And Catherine, do you want to kick us off with talk about the perception of the role in your organisation?
Well, as I said, when I started, it was a new role for our firm that we just reached the stage where we needed it. And so when I started, I think there were still a few partners who were saying, oh, do we really need this? And, you know, will we be able to keep her busy? And so I was meant to be working part-time hours, and I think that lasted for the first week. And then ever since then, it's been full-time hours plus. And I think now, you know, after 3 years in the role, that if you ask just about any of them, they would say that, you know, they don't know how they coped without having this role in the firm, and that they can absolutely see how indispensable it is. And I think just enjoying not having to try and do that themselves, that once you reach the size that you're big enough to need one or an entire team, you can't imagine how you went, you know, got on without them.
Because you were in a newly created role in your law firm, how did you win them over? The few that were reluctant or
quality of work and fast turnaround.
Fast turnaround, yes.
Absolutely, just, you know, proof was in the pudding that they went, oh, I was thinking about we could do this. And the next day I'd say, well, I've done that for you. Would you like to review it? And it doesn't take too many instances of doing that before they really can appreciate where the value is coming from.
Yeah, but I think that's exactly what we do as well. We really have to prove ourselves in the role, because I think we're all conscious of the fact that while we're being paid, we are not actually earning the firm money. So we've got that value proposition is very much at the front of everything that we do. Fiona, do you want to talk about how your role's perceived?
Yeah, I think that point that you just made, I mean, about being an overhead, for want of a better word, is something that we always need to be very conscious of, because our experience is expensive. And so I think we always need to be conscious of demonstrating our value to the business. And the structure that we have in all our regions actually is that our knowledge lawyers sit with the practice team that they support. So they are part of my team, but they're embedded within the fee earning teams. And I think that, I mean, it not only enables them to be closer to the work and to kind of understand the developments, it also makes them more accessible to those people, and it also makes their value clearer, I think. And that's just sort of in you know, ordinary life. In the last couple of years, as Leona was saying earlier, I mean, there's really been the opportunity for the people in that role to shine. I mean, we've got one person who lives and breathes electronic execution of documents. And she is absolutely the firm-wide expert on it. And that's terrific. You know, that's great. I think that should be part of the role. Absolutely,
yes. We've got a similar one in the firm that I'm at as well. It isn't me, thank God.
Yeah.
But it's me on Friday.
Yes, exactly.
Leona, do you want to talk about how you're perceived in the role in your organisation?
I think it's fair to say at my last firm, I hadn't done enough of my own marketing for the team. And I think you have to be your own brand marketer. You have to make people aware of what you're doing. because otherwise they won't understand the value of what you're doing. So I had left that to the person I reported to, and I don't think we did a good job of it. So when I moved to this firm, I was adamant that I was going to be slightly annoying but very noisy, and that I would make sure that the wins, that people would know about them. And the other thing I would like to mention is that I think in Australia, we punch above our weight in some of the things that we do. So our head office is in the UK, so a global law firm headquartered in the UK. They don't often roll out the new technology to us first. So we need to be a little bit clever about how we do things, and with our budget. So there are certain things that we have done here in Australia, which other teams in Asia and in Europe have gone, oh, I want what she's got. And we've done it without budget because we've had to. So a perfect example was we don't have a global knowledge management tool at the moment. It's being discussed, but it has been discussed for some time. But I was not prepared to go with folders in iManage or whatever it was that we had before, or an Excel spreadsheet. And so I piggybacked off our collaboration tool. And this was a tool where you could add lawyers from anywhere in the world, which meant that when the aviation partner in Hong Kong came to me and said, how can I create a knowledge portal for our lawyers? I said, well, I haven't done it for a while, but it might take me 30 minutes. And he's like, and how much will it cost me? And I said, it won't cost you anything because I'm already paying for it. And all of a sudden, as you say, you've given him a solution that has cost him nothing. Every aviation lawyer in the world is now using that portal. Big win. So, of course, we're going to go out and tell other practice areas about it. Does it make more work for us? Yes, it does. And that's that day flying by concept. But yes, it is something I think Australia is very good about coming up with solutions when you may not have the budget for it.
That's so true. Interestingly, you raised the fact that you're working for an international firm with a head office in the UK. I'm in an international firm with a head office in the US, and they do not understand the concept of a knowledge manager or a practice support lawyer. And it was interesting in discussions we had about 8 months ago about a new knowledge system that came out of the US. They were just blown away when we sat around the table and discussed with them what we actually do. And, you know, the fact that we don't have a knowledge system as such, we are cobbling together using existing technologies to create a knowledge system that serves our lawyers here in Australia really well. So they were absolutely blown away by what we were doing, and sort of have gone back to the drawing board. So I don't know whether we've got any new plans, but it's very, very interesting in terms of, you know, working in a global firm, how our roles are perceived in the US, because in the US they would just not pay someone to do that. And I had a similar experience to you, Leona, where I was able we've set up there was a new industry group set up to cover alternative energy and hydrogen specifically, and they wanted to share resources. So we used what we already had to develop a portal for them, and added lawyers from the UK, the US on board, and, you know, populated all with the documents that they were sending around on the bottom of emails. So we stuck all of those documents into it. And I must say, it has had rave reviews. And after every partners conference where it is shown, you know, we get requests, oh, can I join this portal, please? So it is very interesting. That also sort of brings me to another topic. To what extent does technology impact our role? And I think technology for me in my particular role is a big part of it. Sort of training people on, you know, the existing technology, but also new technology, for example, the the electronic signing technologies that we have that you have to sign up for, and getting people to use them properly. So Catherine, I'll call on you to talk about the impact, the role and impact of technology on the role.
Yeah, so I have technology that is sort of my technology that I'm the one who primarily works with and is responsible for and trains on. And then I also interfaced with our IT team on more the practice management type side, and look at, what are the needs of the firm versus what are the needs of the lawyers, and how can we make those two meet. And I also do a lot of, assessing of legal tools, because having that legal perspective of having worked as a practitioner, you can see whether or not you think things will be useful more easily than someone who doesn't have that legal background. And so it's very much a collaboration at our firm of trying to, combine the best of our skills to get the best outcomes.
And okay, I'll go to you, Fiona.
So I think they're all the technologies which I suppose have become sort of, we've started to take them for granted in the last couple of years. So, virtual meetings and training events and so on, actually, I think make our job incalculably easier. It's spread over a number of different offices in Australia and Asia, and even more globally. It's just so much easier to organise, a CLE session virtually. I think, to state the obvious, it's really important to have the conversation about what you want the technology to do. I know it sounds obvious, but I find that it can be quite a difficult to extract from somebody who's seen this nice, shiny new piece of kit, what they actually want it to do first, before you then sort of decide what technology is appropriate and whether that technology will do what they want to, and whether we need to buy new technology or whether we've got something which will do the job already. So that's sort of a fairly frequent conversation. My sort of personal interest is sort of how we can use the data that the firm has got, sort of how we can use technology to mine the data that we have as a law firm, and learn much more about how we work from that. So in terms of interesting technology, we've got stuff out there. We've got stuff that we use all the time. We've got stuff like Catherine said that is particular to the knowledge team, but also we're constantly on the lookout for something which will make us bigger, better, more efficient, more profitable.
Yes, I sympathise with you having to deal with people that come to you with shiny new tools without thinking about what they actually want them to do. So in a way, we almost need to be business analysts, IT business analysts, where we sort of drill down to a particular request. What do you actually want this for? What's it going to achieve? What is the outcome? And what will be, the value proposition?
I think software salespeople are very good at their job. Someone phoning up saying, I've seen this fantastic thing and we've got to get it.
Why?
Yes.
Now, Leonie, do you want to talk about technology? I know you've mentioned it already, but do you want to fill us in on a bit more?
I certainly see technology as the enabler in our roles, very much so. We'll use that technology to free up our lawyers, to let them do the value-added work and leave the mundane process to others, or even machines. In the future, I can see products like iManage, together with iManage Insight powered by Raven. I think, having seen that work, I actually think that will mean that we won't need precedent lawyers in 5 to 10 years, because I reckon that technology will take away the need for that. It's not quite there yet, but I think that that's going to happen, and which is pretty good, because in fact that's probably that precedent creation role is probably one of the more boring aspects, unless you're a real precedent nerd, and they do exist. Exist, but I have to say, get to know the technology you have. I saw a great post the other day on LinkedIn about Word. There is so much you can do in Word that you don't understand necessarily. Get yourself up doing some of the things, go and do a course on it. I was lucky enough that we had in-house experts on Word that I learned so much. I can do almost as much in Word as you can do in Excel, because I hate Excel. But also the product that our collaboration portal, we had that product in the London office, but they had not told anybody that, because only our business development team were using it. We could be using it, but we didn't know that in Australia we actually had this product. So get to know what your firm has so that you can think about what you might be able to do with that, because that has been a game changer. I became a system admin for it, so I could start telling people about the benefits of it. I've also done coding in my life, so I could understand what you could get out of it and what you couldn't get out of it. So I think get to know the technology you have and use it to the nth degree. I think that's a great part of the role. But yes, the shiny new thing, just on that topic, our London office has a smart contracts hub, and we did a great job of advertising it. And all of our clients in Australia, yet, I want a smart contract, I want a smart contract. When you actually got down to the nitty gritty of what they needed, it wasn't a smart contract at all. It might have been document automation, and it might just have been a clause bank. But the reality was they did not need a smart contract. So you have to understand, and they might not know. You really have to do your due diligence around what is needed to solve the problem. And that's the project management side of things, which I do really enjoy.
That's right. And it's also the business analyst side of things,
Yes,
where you've
absolutely.
got to work out what they actually want to do. Yeah. And certainly in a previous role I was in, one of my jobs was to advise people on the broad range of technologies that we have available to them, how to use them effectively, and how it made their work as lawyers. For example, some of the contract review material, some of the document review material that we had. And as you say, Word has amazing functionality, and they keep buying all these other bits and bobs that you can put onto it, where you actually, if you know how to use Word well, you really don't need that. Now, our final topic for discussion is the future for a knowledge manager in a law firm. So, Fiona, do you want to talk about that?
Oh, well, 2 years ago, I would have said a more flexible approach to where we work, but, you know, the future's there on that one. I think, well, I don't know, I'm not sure if I think it will happen. What I would like to see in the future is a more collaborative approach between knowledge and legal project management and legal ops, to sort of bring all those disciplines together, to help sort of deliver the content that lawyers need actually where they're working, if you see what I mean. So I think there's a lot of room for development there, and particularly on that legal ops side, because I think, you know, we're, you know, probably quite good at sort of promoting legal ops to our clients. But I think there's also more work to be done behind the scenes within our own firms about getting our own legal ops kind of up to speed there. So that's what I'd like to see in the future, at any rate.
Well, that's a good wish, I think, especially the collaboration side. Yeah. Catherine, do you want to talk about what you think the future looks like for a knowledge manager?
I think that there's going to be, you know, it's certainly not a role that's going anywhere, that there's going to be an increasing demand for it, that we've seen, you know, over the last few years, just how much value a firm can get from a good knowledge management team. And I think what you're going to see more of is having to do that balancing of, you know, looking at the whole firm interests and how to integrate that knowledge management across the entire firm and, you know, extract kind of the most value possible.
Okay, now, Leona, I know you've mentioned there'll be the end of precedent drafting, but what else do you see in the future?
Maybe that's just a wish, I'm not sure. I see the future as being very bright. I see more and more opportunities for knowledge managers in law firms. Even small firms these days are looking to put knowledge managers in their roles. And our clients, as I've mentioned, they are definitely doing this because they can see you need to harness the power of knowledge knowledge. Understanding there's a difference between document capture and knowledge capture. So that knowledge is the nugget of gold that makes everything else zing. And so I think that once you understand that, the term, you may be called something different. I mean, we might all have knowledge in our title, but it might have a different name. But I think that overseeing project management role, I think it's here to stay. As Catherine says, I thoroughly agree with that. And I think there are going to be more opportunities for knowledge managers.
Mhm.
Well, on that great positive note, I would add to that by saying, yes, the future does look really good for knowledge management. I think we've really proven our worth to the organisations that we all work in. And, you know, the role is very challenging. There's lots of different aspects to it, but I don't think it's going away anytime soon. So with that, we'll end our panel discussion. And a huge thanks to our faculty for this session. We hope everyone who listened in has enjoyed it. So thank you very much for attending. A recording of this session will be available shortly as a video and a podcast. And if anyone listening in would like to receive updates about the release date of the recordings and the work of the College of Law and the Centre for Legal Innovation, please be sure to follow them on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So thank you very much to our panel and our audience for participating.